Oh, Maggie, it's so lovely to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too.
Very much appreciate you doing this. I've
Pleasure.
seen the film 4 times now, and
Wow.
yeah, and have a few more in me. And it's an experience every time, I must
Oh,
say.
well, I'm really glad. I'm really glad you liked it.
I think anyone in any English language country and even beyond has at least an academic relationship with Shakespeare. Can you speak to your relationship to Shakespeare growing up in Northern Ireland, and did it change once you got to university?
Well, I was taught Shakespeare quite at quite a young age. We did our first one when I was at high school. When I was 11, my first year, we just did a different play every year. So I was really lucky because I don't think schools do that anymore. Sadly, I wish they did, but um, so it was always just part of my education, and I always really loved literature. But I really, really loved Hamlet. So I first did it when I was 16, and it just really got under my skin, the whole play. And I loved Hamlet's character, and I think it appeals to a certain type of teenager, which I certainly was. And there's one that just wears a lot of black clothing and too much eyeliner, and with their friends at weekends goes out and takes photographs of themselves in graveyards, that kind of thing. And I was very
That
much.
was me in high school, so I think we
I
were the same generation. So
You still got the black t-shirt on though.
I do.
I've gone a bit more colourful these days. And I think, I think I think actually I do now as a parent think that he is a teenager, in the play. And there's a lot of scholarly debate about how old Hamlet is supposed to be, but anyway, I mean, when I read it now, I think this child is 15, he's a teenager dragged into an adult world totally beyond his comprehension. Anyway, I had a brilliant teacher at high school, and he told us that Shakespeare had a son who'd been called Hamnet, and that he died aged 11, and that Shakespeare had gone on about 4 years later to write Hamlet. And even, I was a really long way from being a writer at that point, but I knew that was really significant. Nobody would casually call a play and a ghost and a young lad after their dead child. It just, the idea that that's a coincidence is ridiculous. So I knew that it was a really significant thing to do. Um, but at university, when I studied literature at university, there was no. It was kind of in the early mid 90s, and it was very sort of fashionable then. The sort of literary criticism, it was all about literary criticism, and you got kind of further away from the text, and there was absolutely no hint that we would ever discuss Shakespeare's biography in terms of when talking about his plays. So it was a very different approach. But I never forgot about Hamnet the boy, and I just had lots of questions, really. And I think the best books you can write are always ones where you have more questions at the beginning than answers.
Yeah, and I mean, you had these questions, and it was clearly the thing that inspired you to create this. Because I can't think of ever even hearing about Hamnet
Yeah.
in when I was studying Shakespeare in high school. It was never a part. I mean, neither honestly was Agnes or
No.
Anne Hathaway.
Mm.
Uh, One thing I absolutely love is the duality in names in this story between Agnes and Anne Hathaway, Hamnet, Hamlet. Was your discovery of Agnes's name part of your research for the book, or was it the other way around?
No, that was. I mean, excuse me. I think what happened was that I always planned to write the novel about father and son, as of course the play is. But when I started researching the book, and I was reading these large biographies of Shakespeare, which are incredible works of scholarship and detective work, because despite Shakespeare's enormous output, which we still have, no thanks to him, thanks to his friends, um, there's actually not that much we know about him. There are big
Yeah.
gaps in his story that we still can't work out where he was at certain times in certain years, or how one thing led to how the son of a glover ended up being the most celebrated playwright. Nobody really knows how that happened. um I can't remember what you asked me now. Oh yes, that's right. So while I was reading these things, I got really distracted and sidetracked by how badly she has been treated. How it's really peculiar. Just there's just been this enormous pile on for hundreds of years onto her, saying, the only story we've ever been fed about her is that he hated her, that she trapped him into marriage, that he ran away to London to get away from her, and he only left her the second best bed in his will. And all of that. There's no evidence. I mean, it is in the will, but that's another story. But there's no evidence for any of that whatsoever. And actually, there's documented evidence to the contrary. So, at the end of his life, when he retired from the stage, he was incredibly wealthy. I mean, really wealthy. But he chose to go back to Stratford-upon-Avon to live with her, which isn't the act of a man who hated his wife and regretted marrying her. So I just got really I couldn't work out where all this was coming from and why people were so determined to hate her and give him a kind of retrospective divorce. And I just thought I wanted to ask readers to open themselves up to a new interpretation that perhaps they did love each other and that he was very tied to Stratford-upon-Avon. So all the money he earned in London, which was a lot, he sent back to Stratford-upon-Avon. He lived in a
Yeah.
one-room lodgings in London, and all his money, he bought a large house for them after Hamlet died. He bought fields, he bought cottages, he leased them out. So I always think actually in his lifetime in Stratford-upon-Avon, he was probably better known as a landlord than anything else.
My goodness.
Yeah.
um, I was talking to Chloe recently
Mhm.
and about the adaptation and how you two came together. And I love what she said. I just told Maggie, if you don't do it, I'm not going to call anybody else. Kind of almost trapping you into it. I loved that. Can you talk about your willingness or your reserve to want to adapt your own work?
Well, I was really pleased when I heard that Chloé Zhao was interested in writing and directing the film. Excuse me. I was so pleased because I knew that she was never going to be a person to make a sort of pristine, conventional, costumey costume drama. When I really never wanted Hamlet to be that or to be on screen like that. Um, and I also knew that she wasn't from a background which is necessarily steeped in Shakespeare, which I think was a real strength because she wasn't going to make a kind of idolatrous Shakespeare-centered film. And in fact, you only hear his name in the last 15 minutes of the film. But then, and I, when she's, I also heard that she wanted me to write the script with her, and my initial reaction was no, I don't think so, because it wasn't, I'd never done it before, but also I'd kind of moved on to other, new things, and I was writing a different book, and I thought actually no, it's not really for me. But Chloe's a very persuasive person, so we got on a Zoom call together, and I was all prepared to say, I'm really pleased. I think you'd be great directing it, but I'm not. I don't want to take this idea further. And then by the end of the call, I was shutting my laptop, and I just thought, I don't know what happened there because I've actually just agreed to do that and to send you the first pass of the script in about a month or two. So I went into the kitchen, and my husband said to me, "Oh, how did she take it?" And I said, actually, I said yes." I'm very glad I did, though, I should say.
I am very glad you did. Very much so. Um, Agnes is a bit of a wilding in this story, the daughter of a forest witch, and has the grip, that seer element. How did you come to give her this power?
Well, I think what a lot of people don't know is that the Forest of Arden, which of course appears in Midsummer Night's Dream very famously, was actually real. It was a real place. Shakespeare's mother's maiden name was Arden, because her family farm was right next to the forest, and it's well documented that there were communities of people living in the wood. They were called woodkerns, and I suppose to kind of flesh out Agnes's character and her story, I just went back to the plays and just swam around in them and to see what I could find and to see what sticks. And I was just thinking about the Forest of Arden and it being real and it being his mother's name. And I thought, okay, that's got to be a big part of the book because it was right up against their farms. It was right up against the Hathaway farm. Um, and the idea of these people, woodkerns living in the woods, whole communities, it's very sort of Robin Hood in a sense.
Very.
And I suppose, and particularly Hamlet, I went back to Hamlet and thought, can I find her? If the boy is here, then surely she's here too. Um, And so I just, yeah, there were many, the many elements of it. So Hamlet, there's a quite a lot of falconry metaphors, and there's all the herbology in the scene where Ophelia um, goes mad,
Yeah.
driven mad. And I did read somewhere that every household had a medicinal herb garden. It was just what you had to, treat common ailments in your household, and it was always the purview of the mother, the woman in the house, to
Yeah.
know how to do those and to make them into medicines. And it was not something that men knew about. And so I was just looking at the scene, and that it's written by somebody who has an awful lot of knowledge about contemporary medicine. You think Ophelia is just handing random flowers, but she's not. Those flowers carry a very cutting message to the people she's handing them to. So she's giving them as a cure for a sort of flaw she perceives in their character. And I was just asking myself, I thought, if he's the man of the household, and he doesn't know about this. So where did he get this information from? And I was just imagining this scene where he's writing it and he just shouts out, what do we use rue for? What's chamomile? What does it do? And I think there she is. I can see her.
I love that. Um, as you are a writer, one scene in the film that really stands out for me is that one shot of Will's writer's block, which I think is just exquisitely written and performed by Paul Mescal. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the difficulty and the symmetry of being a writer writing about a writer?
I had a lot of vertigo, I have to say, when I decided to write a novel about Shakespeare. I thought this is a mad idea. Who would do this? Um, and also I do have a little bit of problem. I don't love it when writers write about writers. I think you've just kind of met yourself coming back. But in a sense, it helped that he isn't the main character of the story. I always wanted to put Hamnet front and center, and that's why he opens the book. And of course, Agnes, who I think has spent too long in the shadows, so I think she needs to come out and have her say.
Yeah.
Uh, so in that way, it was helpful. But I think, I mean, obviously, it does inform. It does inform it, I'm sure. Uh, and I think, he is clearly somebody. You read Hamlet and you read Macbeth and to an extent Othello, and you think this is a man who knows about depression, what we would now call depression, and he knows
Yeah.
or melancholy, they would have called it then, and he knows about stasis, he knows about feeling stuck. Um, and where does that come from?
Yeah. Which I think that's why Paul being cast is so ideal. He's got kind of the corner on these types of roles and just really understands them well.
I
And
think
actually thinking about that, when you went to doing the adaptation, did in your mind you have ideas of not necessarily maybe who might play, but like maybe that who might play them?
I always wanted I always wanted it to be Paul, actually. He was always I kept saying, Paul Mescal, Paul Mescal, please, Paul Mescal. I saw him years ago. He was probably just a student in Dublin at the Gate Theatre in Dublin, um, playing Stephen Dedalus in Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And
Perfect.
he was just, even then, he really stood out, and everybody was just thinking, who the hell's that? And but I think Paul has a very, very specific quality of being able to portray that element of what a character is saying or doing being at odds with what's actually happening inside. And I think that's very important for this role.
And what were your thoughts on Jesse Buckley being able to translate your Agnes?
I think Jessie is amazing. She's a dream, Agnes. And that was Chloe. Chloe always said, it's going to be Jessie. And I was so happy because I knew it had to be someone very specific, and it had to be someone who was very capable of unleashed fury, but also incredible tenderness. And Jessie is absolutely perfect at that. She's got an extraordinary way of showing emotions passing across her face, like weather on a landscape. I mean, yeah, could not have wished for better casting, really.
Indeed, I completely agree. I think you tap into something really wonderful when Will meets Agnes in the forest, or really kind of pounces upon her and stutters. Speaking with people is sometimes difficult to me. So she asks him to tell a story. How did you land on Orpheus and Eurydice, which also becomes kind of a motif for the film?
I think you'd have to. This is a very Chloe moment. This one, I think she relates. You'd have to really ask her. I feel bad, kind of repeating what she said, but I know that she went to the forest with Lukash, the director of photography, and um, she saw they together. I think saw this huge hole in the ground, and so Chloe has said that she had a very physical reaction. So I think for her, she is exploring this idea of the underworld and the world and the connection between them and the sense of loss and transitions, thresholds.
Yeah, we talked about that, so
Okay.
that's
Yeah, she's totally. I'm good. I don't want to paraphrase her.
no, no, not at all. From adapting your book to the screenplay, how did you manage the kill your darlings element of what was not going to make it into the script? How did you synthesize what we see in the film version?
I think you can't, as if you're the novelist, you can't go into it expecting the film to be a perfect replica of your book. I mean, it shouldn't be. The book is one thing and the film is another, and they're siblings rather than twins. And it would be weird, there would be no point in making it a replica because the book already exists. So I think you have to go into it being open to the idea of change. And of course, if you are editing a 350-page book into a 90-page screenplay, obviously there's going to be a lot that you have to take out. Um, but I think to me, the most important thing, and I think it has come through, the actual essence of the book is there, and what I wanted the book to be about is absolutely there on screen. So that makes me very happy.
Yes, and I think Chloe would agree with that. We talked a little bit about how a portion of the book has little dialogue, so it's just it's
Yeah.
it's prose and description, and she says that's exactly why I wanted to do it. It left room for magic, which I thought was such a beautiful phrase. I loved that. um and I'm thinking, it makes me actually think of the amount of time that you spend on like the plague, and that the monkeys flee, and all of that, and what we get in the film are moments that allow us still to understand what's going on, and will to understand what's going on too.
Yeah.
I It's extraordinary. um Sort of on the opposite side of what you can include, Shakespeare and his works and process aren't really featured in the book, but are a huge part of the film. Can you talk about how you and Chloe, since you did the screenplay together, chose to expand on Will and the play themselves? Because it's both. You're giving agency to Agnes as a crucial person in his life, but then also to him to kind of find where they separate and come back together.
I mean, I think one of the big strengths of the film is, and which is different from the book, I think, is that the sort of run up and the production of Hamlet is allowed a lot more space and time, and that makes me so happy because obviously in a book on the page you can't cut and paste, vast screens of Shakespeare. You can't have the whole of To Be or Not to Be. It would just be weird and wrong. So obviously that in the book is quite telescoped down, but in the film it's really allowed to fly its flag, and that's just fantastic. And I think obviously you need, if you're going to have the last, I don't know, 10 minutes or whatever of the film featuring Hamlet, you need to see Will building up to that to really understand the impact of it on the family and on Agnes. So I mean,
Did
it makes me so happy that you see the actors and you hear some of the play and you hear the most important bits of the play, that the bits that coincide with his biography.
it's the thing that was so kind of shocking because the book ends with that remember me, and you're just it takes your breath away. And when you get to there and then you get more, it's incredibly fulfilling. Do you have like a favorite addition from the film that you really kind of cherish as a, like you said, a wonderful sibling?
The bit I mean, I love the last 10 minutes. I'm really thrilled at the bit I really, really love, which isn't in the book, is little Hamnet saying he wants to be a sword fighter in the playhouse. Gets me every time. And then you see him and Paul practicing it. I also found it really amusing because Paul had just come off Gladiator. So Paul's
Yeah.
really good. He's really good with that sword. And there was quite a lot when we were watching that being filmed. I thought, I really hope he doesn't actually get Jacoby because come off really bad. And he's basically winning, Maximus or whatever,
Oh
Gladiator.
my gosh.
But so I love it, but I also find it amusing because then suddenly you see Paul and he's having to tone down his inner gladiator.
Yeah. And you bring up this most incredible performance from Jacoby. Um, I, again, sometimes, when I'm reading a novel just from my cinephile brain, I start, feeling like who could do this, and what would it look like? And I didn't have somebody really for Hamnet, and I'm just knocked out by this incredible child.
He's incredible. I mean, he's even more incredible when you've watched every take. You see him doing it again and again and again. You think, how? Where is that coming from? He's a child. No, he's absolutely jaw-dropping. He's just, yeah, I can't imagine anyone else in that part. And the way he did it, day after day, take after take, was just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I
He's
yes,
very, very, very
bless
special.
that child.
Lovely.
I was gonna ask, as this is the first film adaptation of one of your books. I know there was talks of adapting The Marriage Portrait.
Yeah.
Has anything moved from that?
Yes, I had a chat. So Audrey Dewan is attached to direct, and I had a Zoom with her last week, in fact, talking about the script. So amazingly, she's writing the script in French, and then she's going to translate it. So I don't read French, so it needs to be translated until I get my eyes on it. But apparently, it's going to be
Well,
quite. So we had good chats about casting and timing, and so yes, fingers crossed. And she's so.
ah,
I love her. I think she's going to do a very, very good job.
I think she's extraordinary, so that I'm very happy to hear
Yeah,
that.
I keep my fingers
um,
crossed very soon.
yes, Maggie, thank you so much for your time with me today. I'm going to be at the Hamnet premiere, so I will absolutely say hi
Yes, come say hi. That's
after the film. So I can't wait to say
that's
hi
your
in person.
that's your fifth time.
It will be. It will be. And maybe even more before that. Who knows? We'll see.
So you'll be able to talk along with the actors.
Exactly. Well, at this point, what I really do is I watch people watch it,
Ah, okay,
and
yeah.
then I start feeling I just feel differently. It's sort of like when in those first screenings of the film, when Chloe came out and did the meditation and really asks people to pay attention to the people next to them. And I've kind of carried that with me each time that I've watched it.
Well, she'd be
So
happy to hear that.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I look
cool.
forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, great. Lovely to see you, Eric.